We are heating the planet. The more carbon dioxide we emit, the hotter the world gets.
How much hotter?
Well, that's a very good question. And this week, researchers have finally got closer to an answer. Okay, now firstly, why is this a difficult question to answer? Well, just think about how science is normally done. You observe something and then you vary one thing and then you observe it again and look for the difference. Well, we can't exactly do that with our planet. We've only got one Earth, so we can't just mess around experimenting on it. So how do you think scientists get around this? This is a genuine question. How do you think scientists estimate how hot the world will get for a given amount of carbon dioxide? Maybe even pause this video and leave any guesses in the comments below. Okay, so there are three approaches. The first, and perhaps most obvious, is to look at the historical warming since the Industrial Revolution. The second is to look at all the physical processes which would either amplify or reduce the warming effects of carbon dioxide. And third and finally is to look deep into Earth's past to see carbon dioxide's role in previous climate changes. So 3 whole approaches to answer one question. Surely that's enough to pin down a precise answer, right? Well, no, because each of these approaches has limitations. For example, carbon dioxide isn't the only thing we've been emitting since the Industrial Revolution, and clouds can be a particularly fiddly physical process to pin down. And finally, when we're looking deep into Earth's past, it's hard to know precisely what happened thousands or even millions of years ago. Because of this, there's long been a pretty big range for the value for climate sensitivity. By the way, that's the technical name for what we're talking about here, which is how much hotter the Earth will eventually get if we double carbon dioxide. That's called the equilibrium climate sensitivity. And climate sensitivity to me is just the cutest name. It just sounds like how robust the Earth is to being insulted. Hey Earth, you used to be cool. Okay, not very sensitive. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, puts together reports which sum up all the research going on in climate science. And in 1990, they published their first ever report, which estimated that the climate sensitivity was between 1.5 and 4.5 degrees Celsius. That is a pretty huge range. The lower estimate would mean we've got a bit more time to tackle the problem, while the upper estimate would mean that Earth's going to get much hotter than we'd like, much sooner than we'd like. Okay, but in the most recent 5th report, which was a full 23 years later, the IPCC estimated that the values should be between 1.5 and 4.5 degrees Celsius, which is exactly the same. Which is a bit embarrassing, really. It's not like climate scientists haven't been trying. Well, I personally never tried. This isn't a question I personally ever looked at, but plenty of other climate scientists have. In fact, there have been hundreds of studies on climate sensitivity and many approaches to try and narrow down the range of what climate sensitivity should be. And while these studies succeeded, the problem is they'd often disagree with each other about what this narrower range should be. God, narrower is a difficult word to say. But now, finally, a group of 25 researchers have got together with a new approach, which is to combine all the approaches. So they combined all 3 lines of evidence. So Earth's recent past, Earth's ancient history, and what the science tells us the Earth system feedbacks should be. And they've actually succeeded in narrowing the range. There are lessons to be learned from all the lines of evidence. So, for example, it's very hard to explain the historical warming we've seen since the Industrial Revolution if you accept the previous lower estimates on the range of uncertainty. This is just one of the lessons learned, and there are plenty more. I've included some links to some excellent write-ups in the description of this video, as well as to the paper itself, if you want to nerd out over it. Okay, so combining all the lessons from all the lines of evidence, the team arrived at a range of 2.6 to 3.9 degrees Celsius, more than twice as precise as the previous estimate. So they've ruled out the super high values, which would mean an extremely hot planet, but they've also ruled out the lower values, which would mean we've got a bit more time to get our acts together to stop global warming. To put this 2.6 to 3.9 degrees Celsius in context, the world has agreed to limit global warming to 2 degrees, or ideally 1.5 degrees Celsius, relative to pre-industrial temperatures. Okay, but let's go back to that very first question.
How much hotter will the world get?
Well, the truth is that no one study can answer that. Not even a study as crafty as this one. Today, we've increased CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere by about 50%. Will we end up doubling CO2 concentrations and heading for 2.6 to 3.9 degrees Celsius of warming? Or will we manage to limit carbon dioxide emissions and limit global warming to the relatively safe 1.5 degrees? Well, the truth is that we can only answer this question together by deciding how hard we're going to fight against climate change. And if you want to fight against climate change but you're not sure where to start or continue, then watch this video I made with Curtis Bowdy with some quick tips. And if you want some more climate scientist information and news, then make sure you're subscribed. Okay, until next time. Bye.